Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And for the purposes of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purpose of debate only. Mr. Speaker, I do ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
House Resolution 166 provides for the consideration of 2 measures, H.R. 347 and H.J. Res. 30. The rule provides that for H.R. 347, the Rein-In Act, to be considered under a structured rule, with 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and the ranking minority member of the Committee of Oversight and Accountability or their designees, and provides for 1 motion to recommit. The rule makes in order 15 amendments. Additionally, the rule provides for consideration of H.J. Res. 30, a resolution of congressional disapproval of the rules submitted by the Department of Labor relating to prudence and loyalty in selecting plan investments and exercising shareholder rights. Under a closed rule with 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Education and Workforce or their designees, and it does provide 1 motion to recommit. And Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of the rule and in support of the underlying bills. Today, the Republican majority is holding the Biden administration accountable. The American people sent the Republican majority to Washington to exercise a moderating influence on the executive branch and as a check against President Biden and the Democrats' worst policy impulses. Mr. Speaker, over the last 2 years, the American people have been at the mercy of President Biden and Democrats' reckless tax and spend agenda. Having survived those 2 long years, the American public could not stomach 2 more years of unified Democratic control in Washington, so this past November, American voters elected a Republican majority in the People's House to address the people's business. Instead of devoting all of their time and effort to service industries and projects favored by Democratic consultants, the Green Lobby, and woke political activists, Republicans are working at breakneck speed at a breakneck pace to address the issues that the American people actually care about: protecting the retirement savings of hardworking Americans from Green New Deal radicals. The House GOP is the last line of defense between the American people and President Biden's inflationary agenda. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to commend Mr. Barr for introducing H.J. Res. 30 so we can bring this important piece of legislation to the floor today. Without his leadership on this issue, pensioners and retirees would be defenseless against the designs and machinations of a loud but vocal minority planning to conscript the retirement savings of retirees and American workers to pursue an investment agenda, and one that is not founded on fiduciary responsibility to maximize a return on investment. Democrats understand that their Green New Deal agenda is politically toxic as far as the American public is concerned. They know that their radical energy agenda has been exposed and laid bare to the American people. For that reason, they have orchestrated and overseen a coordinated campaign to capture the boardrooms and the pension funds seeking to implement the change that they simply could not achieve at the ballot box. What Democrats are trying to achieve would be more intellectually and morally defensible if they had the courage to bring these measures to the floor for a vote in the People's House. But in fact, the Democrats could not take that risk, Mr. Speaker. It would be a highly embarrassing spectacle exposing their woke ESG agenda as toxic to the American public. Instead, Democrats and their radical environmental NGO allies will continue to work in the shadows, strong-arming and intimidating corporations and investors alike, using any means necessary to conscript the life savings of pensioners and retirees to implement a dangerous and illiberal investment strategy centered not on the welfare of retirees, but on their favored pet political projects. In addition to this being an unwise and undemocratic investment strategy, Mr. Speaker, if this investment strategy is allowed to metastasize, the traditional energy sources, those that heat our homes, clean our drinking water, and power our electrical grid, will be seriously placed in jeopardy. This isn't hypothetical, Mr. Speaker. Democratic policies are pushing our electrical grid to the brink. Reliable baseload generation sources are being phased out at a dizzying pace. The traditional energy projects that make the comforts of modern life possible are being prematurely marked for closure, not because they're uneconomical, but because they run counter to the Democrats' crusade against fossil fuels. In my native Texas, Mr. Speaker, I'm in communication with capital market professionals who inform me that their firms will no longer invest in energy projects that provide dispatchable and reliable power to the electrical grid. Not because these projects are undeserving or won't deliver a return on investment, but for fear of being named by Democrats and their corporate allies for being insufficiently committed to their radical environmental agenda. I'm reminded of the passage from the Gospel of Matthew, Mr. Speaker. You will know them by their fruits. Democrats are once again looking to conscript the life savings of pensioners and retirees in this new Green Deal agenda. Mr. Speaker, this is the deleterious downstream effect of the Democrats' Green New Deal and their moral panic. It is jeopardizing the health and well-being of American citizens in pursuit of a disturbing dogmatic energy agenda that is myopically focused on potential environmental impacts rather than the flourishing and prosperity of all Americans. Mr. Speaker, the conventional wisdom would suggest that President Biden and his Democrat allies in the House would step back and reassess their policies after having lost their majority in November. One could be forgiven for thinking that having been humbled at the ballot box, Democrats would benefit from reflection and introspection to try to understand why American voters rejected their policies so thoroughly in the midterm elections. Unfortunately for the American people, President Biden and House Democrats have doubled down on their inflationary and unpopular agenda, all in the wake of November's election. Instead of triangulating and trying to better align themselves with the priorities of everyday Americans, the Biden administration has continued this barrage of unpopular executive orders, from trying to cancel student loan debt to increasing household costs for American families through increased energy and food costs. Democrats and President Biden have demonstrated once again they are simply out of step with the American public. This is why Republicans are united in holding the Biden administration accountable for the reckless economic policies that seek to supercharge and further embed inflation into the American economy. The Republican majority is proud to bring to the floor H.R. 347, the Rein-In Act, which would mandate that the Biden administration undertake and produce a report for any major executive order that it issues that would detail the inflationary impact of said executive action. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will reserve the balance of my time.